So a number of years back, my wife and I took a trip all the way out to Death Valley from Indiana. It is a heck of a drive. If you've never driven or been in a car from Indiana all the way to California, it's a long ways to go. Um, so I'm going to show you guys some photos of Death Valley, and I'll show you some pictures of the racetrack playa, because that's one of the main reasons I wanted to visit Death Valley, was to go out to the playa, because I thought it'd be really neat. But anyway, driving into Death Valley, like, you really feel like you're driving into the moon. The plants start to disappear. It's crazy, crazy hot. My wife and I were staying in a hotel room just outside of Death Valley, not too far away, before we actually made our drive in. And it was interesting because in the parking lot of this little motel that we were in, there were all these semis. It was really bizarre. And they weren't just sitting there, they were covered up. They were completely covered in tarps and things. And I thought, boy, it's really weird. Like, it's not going to rain or anything. What are these guys worried about? Why do they have their semis completely tarped? And I remember I asked somebody about it, and they said, "Oh yeah, those semis are going into Death Valley tomorrow. They're being tested." So apparently, like, they go to great lengths to disguise which engine and which brand of parts are in those semis, because they take them into Death Valley and try and kill them. Like, they drive them into Death Valley and drive them out of Death Valley, and they race that engine up as high as it'll go. They'll turn on the air conditioning and see if they can blow the engine up. And Cummins does this as well. I've talked to folks at Cummins. They I don't know if they still do, but they would send trucks all the way out to Death Valley as a way to test them. Because driving in is really not too big of a deal. Like, it's kind of flat-ish coming in. But going out of Death Valley towards California, you go up this you go up the Sierra Nevada mountains, and your engine is just screaming. And there's even signs on the main road in and out of Death Valley that warn you, turn your air conditioning off, like, make sure if your car starts to overheat, stop it and just wait, because people will die out there because their engines blow up trying to get out. So the semi drivers they hire guys to take them out there, and they hide the engine so nobody knows. Like, it won't say Cummins on the side of it, believe me, because they don't want anybody to know if their truck is broken down on the side of the road. They don't want people to see that. So these guys are like driving out. They got the AC up, they got the stereo running, they got the pedal all the way down, the engines are just racing. It's kind of neat to think that that's where they take them to test them. But where we drove on the way in was not where the semis go. It's not where most folks go. It was actually just the year prior to when my wife and I went out here. There was a young, there was a mother and her young son and their dog. They went for a drive out here in Death Valley. I mean, I don't know why they would decide that they needed to go on a picnic into Death Valley, but they were driving out on some of these roads, and the blacktop gives way pretty quick to just gravel dirt roads. And you need a four-wheel drive vehicle. You can't be out there in your little Audi driving around. Like, you're just going to get stuck. And they were in this little car driving around, and they were driving down the road, the main gravel road, and some animal or something had tunneled underneath the road, and their car tire fell in, and they were stuck. And they had like a couple peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in like one bottle of water amongst all of them. It was days before another person went down that road, like days. The only one that survived was the dog. Yeah, so it can be really dangerous just to venture back here. And like I said before, like, I've never felt like I was driving into the moon, like going onto the moon before, as much as I did when I felt like I was going into Death Valley. But this is driving in. There's our truck on the way in. It made the trip, and it's kind of funny because we actually had some sodas in the back, in the bed there, and they all exploded on the way in. Like, that's how hot it was in Bumpy, shaking them up and stuff. It's a beautiful day, but man, it was really hot, really, really hot. I see some cacti back there. That's desert pavement there, what you're looking at, essentially. This is an interesting junction that we came to. It's called Tea Kettle Junction. I have no idea what the meaning of that is. It's probably online somewhere. But people hang their tea kettles there. I don't know why or what that's supposed to be, but it was pretty bizarre just to be driving in the middle of the desert and then see this sign with tea kettles hung all over it. Eventually, the signs give way to just pure wilderness, and you don't see really anything as you start driving. In the distance there, you can see that white patch out there is Racetrack Playa. And you can see there's like a little clump of rocks right there in the middle of it. It's actually a pretty high little clump of rocks. From where I'm at, it looks far away. And this was super neat. Oh, that's some great desert pavement there. See, it looks like road, doesn't it? That's where the ground's been deflated, and all that's left behind are all the rocks. But looking out there, look at how steep those mountains are on the sides of this thing. There were people in certain areas where we were driving that you could see they had four-wheel drive vehicles, and they were rock climbing those things. Like there was some some paths that went up the sides of these that I was really trying to convince my wife to let me take the truck up, and she's like, no way, because it was really steep, and if you messed up, the penalty for failure was pretty high going up one of those things. But people they go out there and race around on them and stuff. I'm sure it's a blast. But driving in, I got a couple of pictures here coming in towards this. So that's Racetrack Playa in the distance. It looks very different, very stark in comparison to the rest of the desert. There's me on the playa, standing there next to one of the famous rocks that's out there. These are the wandering rocks that move around on Racetrack Playa. That's why it gets its name. And the mountain in the distance. This is the ground. I've got a couple of videos in here. I don't remember if this is one or not, but I tried to get a video of what happened when you spit water on the ground. Like we're walking around, and like I said, it feels like you're on the moon. Like the water on your back is the only life support that you have. It almost felt like an oxygen tank in a way. It's just so unbelievably hot and dry. But this ground was all cracked and dried up like this. There's that little patch of rocks. It looks small from the distance. It's actually pretty big. That's all basalt, I think. Big, huge pillows of basalt. And of course, you have to climb that, right? You don't come all the way out there and not climb up that. So we climbed up to the top of that. It was pretty cool. Some pictures from the top. I think there might be a picture of me in here on there. My wife hanging out. It was windy. Like you could feel the breeze across this thing, but it didn't feel very cooling because it was some really hot air that was blowing at you. It was like a furnace. If you look at the very, very top, you'll see me up there. There. But it's a harsh environment. It's really, I can't truly capture and describe to you just how harsh of a place it is compared to anywhere else I've ever been in my entire life. Yeah, man, there is life out there. It's surprising. Most of it is nocturnal, so unless you're out at night, you're not going to see any of it. Like the tarantulas and the scorpions and any of the animals that live out there, they don't venture out during the day. I mean, it's just so hot, it'll just cook you. You can't really take your shoes off and walk on the ground. It's just really hot. It was pretty tricky climbing up there in my flip-flops. Here's an animal that's there. Things don't survive too well out there. It's a rough place to try and carve out a living. A little bit of a bird there, whatever's left. Something got it. Coyote or something, I don't know. Okay, spit into the wind. Here's my wife. Watch the ground there. I had her spit some water out of her pipe there. Look at that. And it's gone. It's just gone. Jinx. Instantly, like instantaneously, as soon as you spit that out, it just hits the floor and sizzles. You could audibly hear it go tss and disappear. You're going to hit the ground. It's pretty cool. Here are the rocks. When I said that they left trails, look at these trails behind these rocks. So in the picture, they would have been coming towards me. There were all kinds of hypotheses as to what caused this. People would say, oh, the locals just go out there and push them around. If you had any idea how hard it was just to get back there in our truck and how long we spent driving down those roads and how hot and horrible it was, to think that people would come out and spend hours, and I can't imagine how many hours out in the flat desert pushing those things, let alone how would they make marks in the ground, because those are some deep grooves. You can't cut a groove in that ground. It's solid. It's like pavement. It's so hard. So like I said, the prevailing hypothesis, there really were two competing ones, is that when the playa becomes a playa lake, which is not very often, the rains come and and they'll wash down the mountainsides, and that whole area fills in with a very shallow, maybe just a couple inches at most, deep of water that doesn't last very long. And if it's very windy, the rocks act like sails. And if you look at these rocks, the sides that are away from me in the picture, they're flat. So the wind was pushing on that flat side that was opposite where I took the picture, pushing them towards me in the picture. And you can see like their little paths match. Like the little curves in the path, each rock makes this little curve at the same exact time. So what we're seeing more than likely is the wind shifted direction and all the rocks responded to it at the same moment and continued their movement. It can't be very fast. I mean, it must be a few centimeters at a time or so. So it's not a very fast movement. Like I said, people haven't really witnessed them move. And there were some weird rocks that had obviously somebody had picked up and moved. And you could tell, like that big one in the distance there, somebody had set that over there because it's on the opposite end of the track of this one. So like some of them were obvious, like people had moved them and rearranged them a little bit. But not many people come out here, so there were plenty of rocks to follow. I'll try and show you some. I think I took a video of myself chasing some here real soon. Look at that. Look how far away that thing moved. Isn't that cool? Look at that big one in the distance. Just drink in the size of that rock. That is not a small rock that the wind's pushed across there. The other theory, the other hypothesis, is that during times of the year when it does get a little damp, that the ice forms, like maybe at night when it gets cold, and the ice kind of helps to slide them and push them along. So that's also a possibility, but more than likely it's the wind. One of these here I'm gonna take a little hike down. Look at how far this goes out from where I'm standing. Look at those rocks in the distance. It's a long ways. So there's the mountain that they're weathering off of. The rock pieces break off of that, tumble down, end up on the playa, and then when it becomes a playa lake, they migrate across. Some of these tracks are really far into the distance. All the way down to that rock right there. There's some in the far distance. There's me sitting on one. They're big. Like some of those rocks are, like I don't think I could pick that up. I might be able to push it if it was slick, but I couldn't push it across that surface. I might roll it over maybe. Some of these rocks are pretty big. My wife's sitting on a rock. We walked all the way out here. I wanted to see where they were coming off of the mountainside. And little bits and fragments are falling on here. You can see kind of where they've moved. Lots of little baby rocks moving off the side of the mountain. It was breezy. I think this is a video of me following one of these rocks. So we'll see here, because I tried to see how far. I just picked a trail. It's like I just picked a trail and I said, I'm just going to follow this as far as it goes. And we'll see where it goes to. Steve Hambling here, and we're standing on the floor of Death Valley, a few hundred feet probably below sea level. And we're out here in California. You can see here, this is the Racetrack Playa. It's humongous expanse of just flat desert. And these are the famous rocks of Racetrack Playa. Here's the cliff that they're weathering off of, and they're falling down here. And when they hit the playa, the wind or some other mechanism causes them to move around. We're going to follow one now, see if we can't track it down. In front of me is the track here, and here we go. It goes on for a long ways, and it looks like it gets a little squirrely up here. It's like suddenly we just sort of stop, make a very sharp turn all the way around, and we go back the other way. This way. Oh, it's really hot down here.
Another sharp, more than 90-degree turn, all the way back around. Coming back this way, and here is the culprit. Right there, rock of Racetrack Playa.
Pretty cool, huh? That's a good question. I honestly don't remember. It came out of those mountains. That's a really good question. That was basalt there in the middle. I'm not sure what the bigger mountain was that some of those things were weathering off of. So that was the lava flow on the side, in the middle of that thing. But yeah, I honestly don't remember. It's been too long since I looked at it. But isn't that a long ways? Like I ran for I didn't know if I'd find a rock at the end of that or not. I just started running and following it. And look at how like it would turn and go like 90 degrees different direction or even more, almost back the other way on itself, 180. So those things really were moving around with the wind. Like when it would shift direction, they just spin around and off they'd go a different way. So driving out was pretty. I wanted to show you this. These big giant things right here are actually related to yucca. If you have a yucca plant at your house, these things are called Joshua trees. And I think it references the Bible because they look like people standing up with their arms held out, is where it kind of gets its name. But they're actually yucca plants. It's really pretty cool. But they make big, huge trees. It was really neat to see those. There's some barrel cacti, and you can see the desert pavement around that. It's not sand, is it? Not sand at all. Very different than the playa, which was kind of like this muddy sort of stuff. And there's us standing out on the canyon, driving out. Driving up this thing was pretty intense, getting back out of it. So that's the Racetrack Playa.